What is up, volleyball fans? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez here, coming at you once again with another episode of Set Point. We have a lot to talk about in this episode, such as the CIF Southern Section Girls Volleyball Division I Final between Mater Dei and Redondo Union. Did the Seahawks finally end the Monarchs' reign, or did the Monarchs three-peat? Also, we have some more milestone alerts. You thought the milestone alerts ended last week? We got plenty more where that came from. Plus, we have some upsets from last week, including Ohio State. The Ohio State handing Wisconsin its first loss in Big Ten Conference play. Also, Villanova pulling off the upset against Missouri. How about Villanova, not just a basketball school? Once again, we are here live on this beautiful Monday. Happy Veterans Day to everyone. If you're here and you're enjoying this beautiful day, feel free to take some time out and thank a veteran for their services. Once again, thank you all that are tuning in to this episode of Set Point. Once again, my name is Teran Rodriguez. You've probably heard me on multiple shows on IE Sports Radio, but we are here today on this beautiful Monday. And happy Veterans Day to everyone once again. You know, big thank you to all the veterans. Thank you for your services. No matter what you did, if you served and protected our beautiful country of the United States of America, thank you very much. From the bottom of my heart and to all of IE Sports Radio, thank you. You deserve the applause button. So yeah, thank you once again to all of our veterans who served our beloved country. Your service is greatly appreciated. Everyone, if you see a veteran and you go past them, whether they're sitting down or whether you're driving or whatever, or you're walking past them, please take some time out to thank them for their services. That's all right. So now that that's out of the way, let's get started on today's episode of Set Point. So before we jump into all the craziness, we have a lot of milestone alerts. And I actually missed some milestone alerts and shout-outs from last week. This shout-out I am particularly ashamed of when it came to missing. I totally forgot about this. Misty May Trainer was recently inducted into the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame. Misty May, for those of you that don't know who Misty May Trainer is, she is an amazing, amazing volleyball player. She was a two-time national AVCA Player of the Year, and she's also a gold medalist, and she's just absolutely amazing. And the reason why I'm ashamed of missing this shout-out is because she actually attended my alma mater, being Newport Harbor High School. So she was a great volleyball player. I think she earned 4 letters in volleyball, 4 letters in track and field, and I believe 4 letters in soccer. Or soccer or basketball. But either way, you know, whichever it was. But either way, she earned 12 varsity letters at Newport Harbor High School, and she also was a standout volleyball player at Long Beach State, and she's currently the Long Beach City College women's volleyball coach. So big ups to Misty May Trainer. Congratulations on your recent induction of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame. That deserves the applause button right there. So as I said, there are actually more milestone alerts. There are more milestone alerts that I kind of missed from last week, and there were some more from this past week. So first of all, Cara Bejima of University of Washington's women's volleyball team, she is now in the top 10 when it comes to kills in terms of all-time kills at Washington. She is now 10th, and she's moving. She's on her way up. She's going to continue to climb that ladder. And in addition to her being in the top 10, Avi Neese is is now moved into 8th all-time in all-time blocks at University of Washington. So that's big for them as well. And as for BYU, Mary Lake, the libero for BYU, is now the all-time dig leader for BYU. So she had 21 digs on Friday, and she has 1,794 digs and counting. So huge shout out to her. Liberos deserve some love too, you know. I think that's one of the most overlooked positions in all of volleyball, and for good reason, because, you know, they don't really get enough credit because they don't get like the kills, but they do keep the play alive. And they scamper to keep the ball from dropping on the ground. So if you see a libero in your next volleyball match, give them a hug, thank them, no matter what grade level they are, whether they're in college, high school, junior college, or in like junior high. Just give them a shout out. Just give them a shout out, give them a hug, and appreciate them. All right, so next up, we have Kylie Mack, who moved into second place in all-time career digs at Drake University, as she has 1,604 digs. And she did it in just 3 seasons, so that's quite amazing for her. So definitely got to give a shout out to Kylie Mack. And this one everyone might know, Jenna Gray. Jenna Gray is collected her 5,000th assist for Stanford in a victory on Saturday against Arizona State, and she's only the 4th player in Stanford history to register 5,000 career assists, which is absolutely awesome. And then continuing on with the Pac-12, Mac May registered her 1,000th kill on Saturday against Utah. And for those of you that don't know who Mac May is, she is just a powerhouse. She is amazing, and from what I was told, that she might be able to make the U.S. national team possibly when her collegiate volleyball career comes to an end. She's the 29th Bruin to reach 1,000 kills as well, so that's pretty awesome as well. And in addition to Mac May's big night, Kyla Lanier, I'm pretty sure Larry B knows who this person is. Kyla Lanier had 40 kills against Utah on Thursday, and she had 39 kills against Colorado. So she is doing it big, and she also had a hitting percentage of .452. That right there is Madden numbers. So yeah, definitely got to give a shout out to Kyla Lanier. You know, she's helping back the pack. And Kate, now let's jump into LaSalle volleyball. You know, Katie Wood is now the all-time assist leader at LaSalle. She has surpassed the previous one, being by Molly Thatcher. So big ups to Katie Wood right there. And then the libero, RC State's libero Kaylee Frazier is now registered the most digs in a single match, being 38 digs, which is absolutely amazing. And 38 digs in a single match, and I believe that was only in 4 sets, which is absolutely amazing. So big ups to RC State and big ups to Kaylee Frazier. And going over to Kansas volleyball, Leah Simmons registered her 1,000th kill and is only the 11th player in program history to do so. So that's huge for her right there. And then last but not least is Hannah Brister, who registered for her 432nd kill, and that's a single season record, so which is absolutely amazing for her. So big ups to her. Big ups to her and all of those players. You deserve the applause button right there. All y'all deserve the applause button. Let's try it again. And Hannah Brister plays for Northwestern State. So big ups to Northwestern State as well, and big ups to Hannah Brister. So that's pretty much that for all of the milestone alerts. If I missed any, please feel free to just send them to me. My Twitter is at Teran Rodriguez 1. You probably know that by now if you all are following me. So there's that. So anyway, we're actually going to do this a little differently. We're not going to jump into the college aspect right now. We're going to jump into the CIF Southern Section Girls Volleyball Division I Final. And that consisted of Redondo Union of Redondo Beach and Mater Dei of Santa Ana. And wouldn't you know it, Redondo managed to end the Monarchs' reign as champions. So Redondo Union wound up winning in 4 sets, 25-19, 25-16, 15-25, 25-21. It was an outstanding matchup. It was a little less, for the most part, it was mostly one-sided, and then Mater Dei just came alive, and then Redondo just finished the job. So big ups to Redondo Union. That's their only their third CIF Southern Section championship in girls volleyball. Big ups to Tommy Chaffins, amazing coach. He and his team have been working hard for this moment, and they managed to get it. So gotta hit the applause button for Redondo Union. So let's talk about that matchup right there between Redondo and Mater Dei. It was a packed crowd. A lot of fans coming in. Everyone was waiting in line. There was a long line coming in for when it came to buying tickets. So if you bought your tickets in advance, you were able to go in instantly. So if you're smart, then congratulations. I unfortunately didn't do that, but that's okay. As for the match itself, it started out tight as both teams were neck and neck. They were just trading blow for blow. First media timeout, it was 7-7. The second media timeout, Redondo Union was up 15-13. Then Redondo just started to reel them off as they kept feeding off of Mater Dei's errors. Mater Dei just did not look like itself. They kept hitting errors. They played a little timid, in my opinion. I mean, it's kind of tough to say that, but considering I picked Mater Dei to win it all, but they just didn't look like themselves, and they just made so many mental mistakes and so many crucial errors that gave Redondo Union points. But Redondo Union is talented. Let me tell you all that much. They have 12 seniors on that team, and they've also got some underclassmen that are really talented as well. So in the first set wound up going to Redondo Union. They took it 25-19, despite a little bit of a push from Mater Dei. And the second set, Redondo just started out early and often when it came to leading, as they ripped off the first. They scored 4 out of the first 5 points, and that led to a Mater Dei timeout. And then suddenly it was 10-4 at the first media timeout, and Redondo just had no plans of letting go of this lead. They were just getting lots of good contributions from everybody, one of which was from Jody Smith, who was a senior middle blocker. So she played a big role as the middle blocker. She just was making it tough for Mater Dei to stop. And Mater Dei had no answer for the middle. And it's quite strange because it seems like every time those two teams play, Redondo loves to run the middle quite a bit. And you would think Mater Dei would know that, but they just had no answer for the middle. They couldn't do anything when it came to the middle. And it was pretty much all Redondo Union in that second set, winning at 25-16. And suddenly Redondo is just one more set away from sweeping away Mater Dei and winning their third CIF championship. But, you're playing Mater Dei. Mater Dei's not going to go down that easily as they start to come alive in that set. They start playing a lot aggressively, and they stopped tipping the ball a lot. One thing that Mater Dei did a lot in the first and second set was they kind of tipped the ball quite a bit, and they made quite a bit of hitting errors. The first set they only hit .28, and then in the second set they only hit .71, which if you're limiting Mater Dei to those hitting numbers, you're doing a really good job of limiting them offensively, and you're definitely doing something right because Mater Dei is well known for having high hitting percentage because they have such talented players like Reagan Merck, Meg Brown, Lauren Tarnoff, and they just pretty much on a really good day, Mater Dei would just go to town. But against Redondo, they just were stymied. But the third set, they came alive. They kept getting everyone involved. Zaria Henderson, a junior who's committed to UCLA, stepped up her gameplay. She definitely lives up to her sister's reputation, and her sister's Amanda Henderson, who plays for Long Beach State. So yeah, go Beach. And and like I said, Zaria Henderson is committed to UCLA, and she definitely showed why she's committed to the Bruins, as she led the Monarchs in kills that night with 12, and she's only a junior. That's the scary thing about her. So she's definitely living up to her reputation, and she's definitely living up to her reputation as a future Bruin. So that was really good. That was really good of her for her to step up, as Mater Dei took the third set 25-15. Then the fourth set, Redondo jumped out to an early lead, and Mater Dei was playing catch-up. And when it comes to most sports, when you're playing from behind, it's really tough to win. And even Tommy Chafin said, when we're ahead, the game of volleyball is a lot more easier. So it really just made it tough for Mater Dei to just get something going, especially when they played from behind. Mater Dei did get the lead down to 22-20, and then Redondo just pretty much kicked it into high gear. There were some questionable plays that Mater Dei did, like I remember their libero went after a ball that was going to go sail out, that was very questionable. And then I think Mater Dei had like a hitting error, which gave Redondo Union championship point. So Mater Dei just was not themselves. And then Redondo pretty much ended the match with a kill from their freshman outside hitter being I'm probably going to butcher her name, Merly Coral Blagovich. I probably butchered her name. Meli Coral Blagovich. And that was pretty much the match right there. Redondo Union took down Mater Dei in 4 sets. So, she and Meli Coral Blagovich and Jody Smith led Redondo Union in kills with 15 kills apiece, and they were just instrumental in Redondo Union's success. Keep in mind, Meli is only a freshman. That's the scary thing, and she was just ripping topspin jump serves like she was a senior. It was quite amazing. So she was really good. Cami Minor was really good when it came to blocking and setting the ball. Nalani Ayazia, who's going to Texas, was really good. By the way, some of those players between Redondo Union and Mater Dei, those players had 17 girls committed to a Division I school, to playing college volleyball. I don't know if it looks like all the schools that they're going to are all Division I schools. But let me read off the list. Redondo Union has Maya Harvey going to Stanford, Ava Karunchik going to USC, Caitlin Kyle going to UCLA, Batya Rothenstein going to Oregon, Lauren Osborne going to Cal State Los Angeles, Lila Ricks is going to Maryland, it looks like. Jesse Szymanski is going to UCI. Jody Smith, who had such a strong game at the middle blocker position for Redondo Union, is going to Gonzaga. And Nalani Ayazia, who is debatably one of the best liberos in California, is going to Texas. It's kind of the shame that she's not going to be going to Hawaii, but it's her choice. Nalani can do whatever she wants. And then as for Mater Dei, their college-bound seniors include Meg Brown, who's going to Pepperdine, Colby Bennett, who's going to be going to USC for beach volleyball, Zaria Henderson, who's going to UCLA, Vanessa Zolg, who's going to Marist College, Lauren Tonoff, who's going to UCLA, Bella Lesage, who's going to Northwestern University, Mia Tuaniga, who is going to Long Beach State. Woo! Go Long Beach. And then lastly is Lauren Sweeney, who is going to Fordham College. So once again, that's 17 Division I bound volleyball players between Mater Dei and Redondo Union. So they definitely deserve a round of applause. Well, they're actually college bound. But most of those schools are Division I. Most of those schools, if not all of those schools, are Division I. But if I messed up on any of those schools, just let me know. But either way, that's pretty impressive. Like 17 players have committed to a college, so that's really awesome. So as for the match overall itself, Redondo's senior leadership and their hard work really paid off, as they pretty much just overpowered Mater Dei. They just were the better team. They executed their game plan better. They served and passed better. They just did everything. They hit the ball better. They just straight up did everything better. There's nothing more to say. Mater Dei did not play Mater Dei volleyball. It was just not their night. This was debatably their worst matchup, the worst match they've ever played this year. Like, against Marymount in their tournaments, they at least were leading in the match 1-0. And then against Padua, they didn't know what to expect. And they even were up against Padua in the match. And even when they lost to Redondo Union the first time, they were up 2-0 in that match. And they had match point twice, and then they just couldn't convert. But Saturday was not Mater Dei's night. Simply put, they didn't play Mater Dei volleyball. They looked timid in that match. They weren't serving and passing aggressively, and they didn't hit the ball well. The ball was either hit off the antenna, it was hit out, or was just hit into the block, or they were just tipping the ball, which you don't really want to do a lot. And because they gave Redondo Union way too much time on the block, to be honest. And despite not having any players that reached the CIF finals prior to this year, Redondo's senior class just led the way, and their leadership and their overall strong gameplay and their hard work and determination and their hunger to just win the CIF title for the first time in 5 years was outdid Mater Dei. And another thing is that Mater Dei kept getting rattled whenever a call didn't go their way. Like, there were some questionable calls, I will admit that, but you gotta play through that. Refs are human; they'll make mistakes sometimes, but Mater Dei just couldn't get in a groove. They just couldn't get in a groove until set 3, and then for the most part, and like I said, when the refs made a questionable call that went to Redondo, they just couldn't capitalize, and they just couldn't move on from that. And Redondo pretty much got in their heads, and then Mater Dei got into their own heads, and that pretty much was the game right there. I just think that's kind of what cost Mater Dei. They just didn't have a full focus on after some of those questionable calls, and they just played their worst match of the season. That's what I got. That's pretty much all I got. They played their worst match of the season, and they didn't play Mater Dei girls volleyball. Luckily, Mater Dei has another chance against Redondo Union on Saturday. The two are playing in the CIF state playoffs, and it's a weird 5-team bracket. The 5 teams that are committed going from number 5 all the way to the top seed is Cathedral Catholic of San Diego, Marymount of Los Angeles, Mater Dei, Redondo Union, and Torrey Pines of San Diego. So Torrey Pines is the top seed. Marymount and Cathedral Catholic will play each other in a first round regional game on, I believe it's going to be on a Tuesday, if not a Wednesday. Yeah, it's going to be on a Wednesday, the 13th. So those two teams face each other, and the winner gets to play at the top seed, Torrey Pines. As for Mater Dei and Redondo, they get to face each other right off the bat on Saturday, and that's an interesting matchup because both of those teams just faced each other, and now I expect Mater Dei to actually come with a better understanding in regards to that matchup. Like, they definitely now know what to expect from from Redondo Union at full strength. And when I say full strength, I say full strength considering the first time that Mater Dei and Redondo Union faced each other, Redondo was not at full strength as Cami Minor wasn't with Redondo Union as she was with the U.S. Girls Youth National Team, which is very impressive, by the way. But I really expect Mater Dei to just come out with better firepower and just better motivation. I don't know what it was. I know Mater Dei lost a bunch of their players due to graduation from last year, but they have some players that were in the finals last year, like Mia Tuaniga, Meg Brown, Reagan Merck, Jordan Schilling kind of played in the final. I know this was her first time at Libero when it came to the final, but she has a good feel for what a CIF final looks and feels like. So overall, I just think Mater Dei just needs to come with a better approach, and they just need to come like mentally and physically prepared. Like, I think I don't want to say this in a mean way, but I think that might have been the first time I've seen Mater Dei unprepared for an opponent. Now, I've seen a lot of Mater Dei girls volleyball in the past. So, and Mater Dei definitely has a talented team. Like, they have some really good wins, and one of which was against Assumption, which had an 83-game winning streak dating back to, I want to say 2016. Yeah, Assumption from Kentucky, and Mater Dei was down 2-0 in that match, and they managed to reverse sweep them. So to me, I think Mater Dei needs to come with a better approach. They're going to let this loss sting for a bit, but I do expect them to come ready for Saturday's game. Heck, maybe Dan Odell should this might sound pretty cheesy, but maybe Dan Odell should run 5-1 instead of 6-2, because maybe they'll throw Redondo Union. That'll throw Redondo Union off, because they, obviously, that would mean losing Mia Tuaniga losing Mia Tuaniga hitting when it comes to running 5-1. But maybe that'll work. I've seen teams run 6-2 before, and then they suddenly switch to 5-1 because it wasn't working. So who knows? But knowing Dan Odell, he'll probably just look back at film, and then just get back into the gymnasium and say, we got another shot at them. Our season's not over. We just got to have a better approach. Because now, basically, if they lose in the CIF state playoffs, it's pretty much the end of their season. Same goes for Redondo Union, though. I think it'll be a really good match on Saturday. The game will be at Redondo Union, and Redondo Union has had a lot of success in their gym really recently. I think their last loss in their gymnasium came in 2017. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure their last loss in their home gymnasium came back in 2017. Don't quote me on that, though. But to close the book on this, I think it'll be a great matchup between Mater Dei and Redondo Union. I really want that match to go 5. Unfortunately, I won't be there. I will be at Long Beach State Cal Poly in terms of women's volleyball on Saturday, and that's going to be Long Beach State's senior night, meaning they'll be saying farewell to a few seniors, and that'll be their last home match, because after this week, they only have one match remaining, and that'll be against Hawaii, and I certainly can't go to that. So that's pretty much that. Now, and on that note, let's transition into some of these conferences. Some of these conferences have had a decided conference champion, whether it's in the regular season or whether it's when it comes to the regular season. But some conferences are some conferences still have a ways to go when it comes to crowning a conference champion. Let's start with the Big West Conference. Last weekend, the same night Mater Dei played Redondo Union, UCSB and Cal Poly faced each other at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and Cal Poly ultimately came away with a sweep. So in case you're wondering what the standings are when it comes to the Big West Conference, Hawaii and Cal Poly are both in first place, and then UCSB is in third place. So I was getting updates on my phone in regards to that, and I was very disappointed in how Santa Barbara just came out against Cal Poly. Don't get me wrong, I know Cal Poly has the longest home game winning streak to date when it comes to 30 matches, which I believe dates back to 2017. But that's just a bad effort overall by Santa Barbara, and I was pretty high on them going into this season, considering they had only one loss going into conference play, and now suddenly it looks like they're pretty much out of the race when it comes to the Big West Conference. I don't see them finishing first, and even if they finish tied for first with Hawaii and Cal Poly, I don't think UCSB has the tiebreaker, because they lost twice to Hawaii, one of which they probably should have won, and they lost to Cal Poly, which, even though they beat them the first time, the second time, they just straight up got swept. So in regards to the tiebreaker, I think Hawaii and Cal Poly has the tiebreaker over Santa Barbara. As for the tiebreaker between Hawaii and Cal Poly, I believe Cal Poly owns the tiebreaker considering number of sets won. I could be wrong though, but either way, Cal Poly and Hawaii are in control of their destiny. Hawaii picked up a big win last week against UC Davis. I was kind of concerned that they were actually going to struggle with that match, considering Davis has been really strong at home. I think they only lost two home games. They've only lost two home games prior to losing at Hawaii, or losing to Hawaii. So now Hawaii's in control of their own fate with two conference games remaining. They don't have any games this week as they have a bye week, but their last two games are against Cal State Northridge and Long Beach State, both of which are going to be at Stan Sheriff Center, which is really convenient for them considering though Hawaii really does a good job playing at Hawaii. Stan Sheriff Center is pretty much like their protection and their safe haven. They've only lost one home game all year, and that was to Baylor, which, Baylor is really good. Actually, no, they didn't lose to Baylor. They lost to... I don't know. They lost to UC Irvine. That was who they lost to, which... I don't know. I think that was just an off night for Hawaii. I think they just got ahead of themselves, and then they let Irvine back into the matchup, which, they just can't do that. And which they've actually done a better job. They're closing out matches, but I don't think Hawaii's out of the woods just yet. Their last two matchups, okay, CSUN I could see them beating. I can see them sweeping CSUN. Long Beach is, I don't mean to sound biased, but I think that Long Beach matchup is kind of their trap game where, Long Beach hasn't had the best season, but they're definitely capable of playing spoiler, and they have played spoiler in the past when it comes to other teams. So Long Beach is definitely a team to watch for next week, and Long Beach State has two home games this week, so they have they pretty much face Santa Barbara on Friday, and then they face Cal Poly on Saturday, and who knows, maybe Long Beach State could play spoiler to Cal Poly, because Long Beach State plays pretty well in the pyramid. I could already tell you that Long Beach State definitely has a chance of beating UC Santa Barbara on Friday, because Santa Barbara struggles when it comes to playing in the pyramid. I don't know what it is, but their last win in the pyramid came in 2011, which Long Beach State managed to make the NCAA tournament, where they lost to University of San Diego that year. But besides that, I think this is the year Santa Barbara does win in the pyramid, but it wouldn't surprise me if Long Beach State beats Santa Barbara. Long Beach is actually playing decent volleyball, as they recorded two sweeps, one of which being against Irvine and the other being against Cal State Fullerton. They played so much better in that Fullerton matchup the second time around. The first time, I don't think they did not do a good job of closing out. So overall, I think Long Beach is definitely the team that could play spoiler for Hawaii, and they also could play spoiler for Cal Poly as well. So we'll see how it goes, though. As for Cal Poly, looking at Cal Poly's schedule, they are at CSUN and they are at Long Beach State. I can definitely see them. And then next week they are home against UC Irvine and Cal State Fullerton. So Cal Poly in general controls its fate. They just got to get the job done. Once they get past that Long Beach, if they get past this week with no problems, next week should be pretty much cake, considering they own the longest home game winning streak, being at 30. So it's definitely quite amazing of what Cal Poly has done this year. Because if you all remember, Cal Poly started the season off 0-3, losing to teams like Kentucky and St. Mary's, and they even lost to Utah as well. So Cal Poly is definitely doing it big in the Big West. So as for Santa Barbara, they're definitely going to need a lot of help when it comes to clinching the Big West Conference title. I don't know what the scenario is when it comes to a three-way tie, but who knows? Maybe if they tie with Cal Poly and Hawaii, those three all automatically go into the Big West or the NCAA tournament. It has happened before. Like, I remember back in 2013, there was a three-way tie between Northridge, Hawaii, and Santa Barbara, and all three of those teams went to the NCAA tournament. I could see UCSB in the NIT, though. The NIT is basically like the 65th place, or it's basically like a consolation tournament for all the other teams that just missed the cut when it came to the NCAA tournament. It's either the NIT or the CIT. But either way, it's basically just like a consolation tournament for some of the other teams that didn't make the playoffs but had a good season. So there's that. But overall, if you all see me at Long Beach on Saturday, feel free to give me a shout out or just feel free to say hi to me. It would definitely mean a lot if you did. So there's that. So there's that, and overall, I think the Big West Conference will be decided this week. You never know though when it comes to some of these games because when it comes to conference play, anyone can beat anyone. So I'm definitely looking forward to this Saturday and Friday as well. So we'll see how it goes. So now let's transition into the Big East Conference where Villanova picked up a huge win last week. They managed to knock off. It was. Did I say it was Missouri? I meant to say it was Creighton. They swept Creighton. Villanova swept Creighton of all teams. I didn't think they had what it takes to knock off Creighton. And yeah, that was my fault saying that was Missouri. But overall, Villanova, they've suddenly jumped into the consideration of them making the NCAA tournament. This week, Villanova plays Marquette. They play Marquette this week. And they also play DePaul. DePaul could be a bit of a trap game for Villanova because, DePaul isn't on the level of Marquette, Creighton, and Villanova. But, as they're only 3-11, but, they just can't, Villanova just cannot look ahead. They just got to get done with DePaul, and then they could look forward to Marquette. And that would be a huge win for Villanova. It definitely would bolster their chances of making the NCAA tournament. Marquette and Creighton are both tied for first in the conference. As for Marquette, they play Georgetown, and then they also play Villanova. Next week they also play at Creighton, which is going to be huge for them, but again, you just can't look ahead if you're Creighton or if you're Marquette, because if you look ahead, you could miss your the opponent ahead right in front of you, and that team could actually pull the upset. So there's pretty much that. I predict Marquette's going to beat Villanova in 5. I'm going to say that Marquette gets the win in 5. Villanova it's going to be at Marquette, but Villanova's definitely improved. They've got some pretty decent wins this year, especially, and that win over Creighton definitely makes them a case for making the NCAA tournament. And the Big East Conference is always a really good conference. There are some pretty good teams in this conference as well. Not just Villanova, Creighton, and Marquette. St. John's is up there as well. So that's that. Butler is having a solid season in conference, but their overall record leaves a lot to be desired. But as for Marquette and Villanova, I'm taking Marquette to win that one in 5. I'll be nice to Villanova. And this just goes to show you that some of these basketball schools aren't just basketball schools. So we'll see how it goes for that matchup. So yeah. And now let's talk about the Conference USA, where West Kentucky. Yeah, Western Kentucky upset Rice last year. That was a huge win for Western Kentucky. They did it on the road against Rice, the winning in 5 sets, and that was a huge win for West Kentucky. Gotta give them the applause button. And if you look at West Kentucky's University's schedule, they're 26-1. I think that's got to be the highest winning percentage in terms of overall in the nation. Western Kentucky is not to be slept on. They did not play like a number 22 ranked team. They played like a much different team against Rice, and that was a huge win over Rice. And suddenly they're all alone in first place with 2 games to go. They play Louisiana and they also play UAB. I can see them winning both of those matchups as well. UAB is not good. They're only 12-13 overall and 4-8 in conference. And then as for Louisiana Tech, they're pretty much near the bottom with UAB. They're right below them as well. So, but again, you just never know what may happen. So if you're Western Kentucky, you just can't get ahead of yourself. But this Western Kentucky team is looking really good going into the NCAA tournament. And I believe there is a tournament. No, they don't have a conference. They don't have a conference tournament. So some of these conferences have conference tournaments, which can give another team a chance to possibly make the NCAA tournament. And some of these conferences don't. As for Rice, they got to finish the season strong. They play UTSA on Thursday, and they play UTEP to close the season out on Saturday. So they just got to finish strong. You never know what, but they're pretty much they pretty much should still be a lock for making the NCAA tournament. Like they're one of their wins was against Texas, for God's sake. Excuse me for saying that, but for goodness sake, they beat number 3 Texas. They beat number 3 Texas. That is nothing to sneeze at. Their only other loss was to Stephen F. Austin, which, that team's having a really good season as well. And I'm going to be getting into them shortly. But to beat number 3 Texas, Rice is definitely a team that's going to be making the NCAA tournament. So they just won't be winning the conference unless Western Kentucky loses out and then Rice wins out. But that's highly unlikely. So, but, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anything is possible. Anything is possible, in my opinion. So So now let's jump over to the Horizon League, where we had a bit of a crazy week last week. Now this conference does have a conference tournament, but as for the current standings right now, Wright State and Green Bay are tied for first in the Horizon League. Now, you're probably wondering, where's Milwaukee? What happened to them? Milwaukee lost both of their matchups last week. They lost to Oakland, and they lost to Northern Kentucky, both in 4 sets. And honestly, that's very disappointing if you're Milwaukee. You know, Milwaukee looked like this really good team, really dominant team. And you know, now that they have a few losses, but now that they have like 4 conference losses, you know, this kind of puts them in a bad situation when it comes to winning the regular season conference title. They do have the Horizon League tournament coming up, and they do look like a team that should still make the NCAA tournament, but, you know, the Horizon League isn't really a Power 5 conference. This week, Milwaukee does have 2 home games. They play at UIC, and they also have another crucial game against Green Bay as well. That Green Bay matchup is going to be big time right there. I really think that could decide who wins the Horizon League regular season conference. And UIC is up there as well. UIC is having a really good season, being 20-8, and despite their 9-5 conference record, they can still make the NCAA tournament too. Again, you know, Horizon League isn't really a Power 5 conference like the Pac-12, the Big 10, or the Big 12, but you never know with some of these teams. You know, some teams may get snubbed out. You know, it all depends on what the committee does. As for Wright State, they jumped into first place, and they are the hottest team in the Horizon League. They beat UIC last week, and they barely squeaked one out against Cleveland State. This week, they are at Youngstown State and at Oakland, which, you know, Oakland has been the dark horse team. They've been the spoiler team, and then Youngstown State, they shouldn't have too much trouble. I think Wright State wins out this week, and I think Green Bay will lose to Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee's going to say, you know what? What in God's name happened to us? You know, how did we go from being one of the more dominant teams in this league to being the 3rd place team in this league? And I think Milwaukee beats Green Bay. I think Milwaukee wins out, and then Green Bay and loses to Milwaukee, and that makes Wright State the outright regular season conference champion. But the conference tournament or the league tournament is going to be really, really intense. I'm glad they do this whole thing with conference tournaments. It gives other teams a chance to like possibly make the NCAA tournament, like UIC, Oakland. Northern Kentucky is also having a pretty decent season as well. Green Bay, Milwaukee, and Wright State. You know, it's not just those 3 teams that are up there. The entire conference or league can do some damage as well. And this whole conference tournament is basically a second chance. So we'll see how it goes. As for Milwaukee's games, you know, that UIC game is a big trap game right there, considering, you know, they just can't look ahead because Green Bay has been really good this year, and Green Bay's a rivalry game. And, you know, Milwaukee obviously wants to beat Green Bay, considering it's an inner city rival and it's a state rivalry. And who knows, maybe Aaron Rodgers will be at that game. Probably not, but who knows. Anything can happen. So Milwaukee just needs to take care of business on Thursday against UIC on Thursday, and then they need to take care of business against Green Bay on Saturday. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes, though. Oh, actually, no. Milwaukee plays UIC on Friday, then they play Green Bay on Saturday. So it's a back-to-back game right there. Luckily, it will be in Milwaukee, so they definitely have the luxury of having home court advantage when it comes to this week, but they just can't like take that for granted. They just can't take UIC or any other team for granted, because losing those 2 games to Northern Kentucky and Oakland, you know, granted, both of those teams are definitely dark horse teams to possibly win the conference tournament, but overall, you just can't lose to those type of teams. Oakland is kind of has definitely had Milwaukee's number because they swept the regular season series against Milwaukee, which is very impressive. And the Northern Kentucky's starting to pick up steam too, as they've won three in a row as well. So you definitely can't sleep on any of those teams in the Horizon League. You just can't. So and whoever wins the conference, the regular season league will be the number one seed in the conference tournament, and then second in the league gets the second seed, so on and so forth. I think between the final two teams, there'll be a play-in game to see which team goes to the league tournament and which team just goes home, or just could be the top four, and then the bottom four, and then last place gets left out. You never know with some of these tournaments. You never know if they could do it basketball style. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes when it comes to that matchup. But overall, I expect that league to have a dramatic finish and a dramatic climax. So it just goes to show you that the Horizon League is definitely a league to keep your eye on for. All right, so now let's jump into the Ivy League standings, where the Ivy League standings are very close, as Princeton is ahead when it comes to that conference at 11-1, followed by Yale at 10-2, and then Cornell is 9-3, and basically it's a complete mishandled log jam when it comes to fourth place through ninth place, or fourth place through eighth place. But overall, Princeton is having a great season. Despite their 15-6 record, despite having a later start to the season, this Princeton team looks really solid, especially with Jessie Harris at center. She's a Southern California product, being from Corona Del Mar High School, and I believe Amy Underdown of Miracosta plays for Princeton as well. As for Princeton as a whole, they have two big road games this week, which could determine which team clinches the conference championship. Their first game being Brown is on Friday, and then they play at Yale on Saturday. That Brown game is a big trap game because that's kind of a rivalry game, and Brown is actually they're in fourth place, and despite their 5-7 conference record, their overall record looks pretty solid, being 13-9. So Princeton cannot overlook Brown, because Brown looks solid on paper. Like, it doesn't show in the conference, but Brown, being the fourth best team, could surprise some teams. Princeton has had the element of surprise sprung on them earlier this year when it came to conference play, losing to Cornell. And Cornell's the third place team currently. So they just got to get the job done against Brown, and then they could focus on Yale. Yale this week, I think Yale has an easier matchup prior to the Princeton matchup. Yeah, Yale plays Penn, which, is below Brown, but again, you just can't take anyone for granted. And I don't think Yale is going to take Penn for granted. I think Yale is going to sweep Penn, and they're coming off of a big week last week, having beaten Cornell, which is a big rivalry right there, and then having swept the baby blue rivalry matchup against Columbia in straight sets. So Yale is going to get the job done. I definitely see them beating Penn. Beating Penn quite easily. Princeton, I think, will have a little bit of a tough time against Brown, but if they play their game and they don't get into each other's heads, or they don't let the other team get into their heads, I definitely see Princeton just getting past Brown, and just then they could look forward to their matchup against Yale. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes, though. So now let's get into the Missouri Valley Conference, where it's a tight race in that when it comes to that conference, as where I believe Loyola is all alone in first place, which is really cool if you ask me. No. Loyola is right behind UNI. UNI. Yeah, I believe that's University of Northern Idaho, if I'm not mistaken. This week, UNI only has one matchup, and that's against Drake. No, they're not playing Drake at their game. They're playing Drake. Not Drake, Aubrey Drake O'Graham. They're playing Drake the college. Just gonna get that out of the way. They're not playing Drake music. They're playing Drake the college. As for the team that's right behind UNI, which is Loyola of Chicago, Loyola has two games this week, being against Bradley and being against Illinois State. Loyola is right behind UNI, University of Northern Idaho, and those are two tough games between Bradley and Illinois State. Bradley is right behind Loyola, and Illinois State is right behind Bradley. And being Illinois State being an inner city game between Loyola of Chicago and Illinois State, that's going to be a crucial game for Loyola. And if Loyola can get past this week, then they can look forward to their match against UNI. It's tough. Again, it's tough to have a clear head when it comes to two big games like that, and then a huge game which could decide the conference championship, which could decide the regular season conference championship next week. But they just gotta get past Bradley and Hilaire. I believe that this is the conference tournament and the regular season conference title will be all important for Loyola and UNI, University of Northern Idaho. So it's definitely going to be crucial for both of those teams. So, but I think Loyola and American is 20-7, while Colgate is 20-6. Yeah, and Colgate is like for Colgate Fate trying to take down Navy. American has a Navy and Bucknell. Bucknell's actually pretty good. Take away that 3-11 conference record, and Bucknell has a record of 11-1 over in non-conference play. So that's pretty impressive for Bucknell. So Colgate, like I said, has a bit of a trap game ahead of them going into the conference tournament, but who knows? Maybe then the semifinals be on who are both really good. Who both have really had those two teams have had really good seasons. They're pretty much like splitting images of one another. Problem with Colgate is that they just have a tougher road in order to possibly getting that number 1 seed. I believe American has the tiebreaker considering they've won more sets. If not, then it'll go down to points. You just don't want to end up underestimating anyone. All right, so now let's jump into the Sun Belt Conference, where the Sun Belt Conference East is pretty much in a logjam for first place between Coastal Carolina and Chisholm. So as for this week in the Sun Belt Conference, Troy plays South Alabama on Friday, and that could wind up determining who wins the Sun Belt Conference East and who in the regular season. And Coastal Carolina also has a big matchup as well, as they play Troy on Friday, and then they play South Alabama on Saturday or on Sunday. So that's going to be a huge matchup for Coastal Carolina. And then South Alabama also plays App State, which has had a really good football team this year. So big ups to their football team, even though they lost to Georgia Southern. But that's besides the point. The point is that Coastal Carolina cannot cruise through this week. This is a huge week for them. This could wind up determining this could wind up determining their fate when it comes to the Sun Belt Conference Championship tournament that's going to be coming up. Yes, they have the Sun Belt Conference tournament that's coming up. I believe it'll be. I'm on the it's a very I don't know the format for that matchup. I would assume it would be like top 4 teams, maybe top 3, or the top 2 teams in each division face each other, and then whoever wins each division basically faces each other. It all depends, but Texas State definitely looks like a favorite to win the whole shebang, and because they look like a very Cheyenne Husky has definitely done her part when it comes to Texas State. She has definitely had a strong season for the Bobcats. I just think Texas State's going to win the whole Sun Belt tournament, and that they're just going to just do away with everybody. No offense, nothing against Coastal Carolina, South Alabama, and Troy, but I just don't think they're on Texas State's level. Granted, Coastal Carolina has had an impressive season at 21-5, and South Alabama is 20-8, and then Troy is 21-6. But I just don't think those 3 teams can stack up to Texas State, even though Texas State does have a pair of conference losses. They did lose to Louisiana, which was a bit unexpected, and they also lost to Arkansas State. Louisiana's right behind them, though. Louisiana's right behind Texas State, and then Arkansas State was, I think, I saw that Texas State wasn't themselves, and Arkansas State made the plays that truly mattered to them. So we'll see how it goes, though. It all depends on how the Sun Belt Conference does it. Sometimes they have this weird little format, but you never know. I still stand by. I still stand by what I say when I say Texas State is going to is just going to wind up running through that conference tournament and just running through anyone that gets in their way, because they're really well coached and they have some really great players, and it's not just the Cheyenne Huskies show. They have like a bunch of other talented players on that team. So now let's jump into the Summit Conference, where South Dakota, they've also had a great season. I think they have the second. South Dakota has clinched the Summit League title, as they play Western Illinois and Purdue Fort Wayne. The Purdue Fort Wayne match could be a bit of a tough matchup, considering Purdue Fort Wayne is like right behind them. And then this conference also has a conference tournament as well. So South Dakota, despite having only one loss, could possibly run into some trouble. The impressive thing about South Dakota is their only loss was to Iowa State, which I believe is in the Big Ten, which that's a Power 5 conference right there. So other than that, South Dakota has been pretty much perfect through most of their games. Denver's right behind them. Purdue Fort Wayne is right there. I can see Purdue Fort Wayne challenging South Dakota. Omaha is there. But overall, I just think South Dakota is going to run through their last 2 games and possibly just run through the championship. It's going to be in Denver, Colorado. However, so Denver will be the host site for the Summit League Conference Championship. So Denver does get the advantage over that, and playing in Denver means it's going to be, you kind of have to adapt to like the altitude, and you kind of have to adapt to the the pressure. And Denver has some passionate fans. Denver also took a set off of South Dakota, and they even pushed South Dakota to 5 sets. Then again, Omaha also did the same as well. But Denver playing at home could pose a big threat to South Dakota. We'll see how it goes, though. But I think Denver can give South Dakota a run for its money, especially if it's a big home game. So we'll see how it goes. Now let's jump into the West Coast Conference, where there is a big time matchup this week. It is going to be BYU against University of San Diego, and that's going to be a huge matchup. That game will be played at the Jenny Craig Pavilion in San Diego, so it's definitely going to be a crucial matchup for both teams. San Diego's only conference loss was to Pepperdine. BYU's only conference loss was to San Diego. Whoever wins pretty much will have the inside track to finishing first in the conference with, I believe, only 3 games to go. BYU definitely is young. Both teams are young this year, but with the leadership of Mary Lake, it's kind of tough to pick against BYU. I think BYU gets the job done in 5 tonight on Friday. I think BYU is going to come with a little bit more passion, and they're just going to come with a bigger sense of urgency because they lost at home to San Diego, which it's a shocker because their last conference home loss was to San Diego, and those two are bitter rivals. Those two teams. I wouldn't say they hate each other. They just really. It's just a big time rivalry when it comes to those two teams. When it comes to women's volleyball, San Diego's going to come out ready to go. They have some really good options. Grace Froling continues to play some of her best volleyball when it comes to that team. She could be the West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year, and I definitely can see that because she's really good on the service line, and she could also play setter, and she just really helps San Diego on the right side as well. So you definitely, that's definitely my candidate pick for WCC Freshman of the Year. Pepperdine is right behind BYU and San Diego. However, Pepperdine does not get a chance, will not be able to play those two teams and the remainder. Oh, actually, no, they play BYU on the 26th, but BYU is just so tough at home. I can definitely see Pepperdine making it into the NCAA tournament. I just don't see them beating BYU, and because don't get me wrong, Pepperdine has a great program with players like Hannah Froling and Shannon Scully, to name a couple. But honestly, I just don't think they're capable of knocking off BYU at BYU. But a positive for the Waves this week was they did beat Loyola Marymount, sweeping the PCH Cup, which is basically Malibu versus Los Angeles. So that's impressive for Pepperdine, to win the PCH Cup. That's always good to win a little bit of a rivalry competition between those two teams. So there's that. But as for my pick between BYU and San Diego, I gotta go with BYU. I'm picking them to win in 5. It wouldn't shock me if San Diego won, considering they are a good home team when it comes to playing at Jenny Craig Pavilion. But I just think BYU just will have a lot more zip. And they have some really good wins, such as against teams such as like Stanford. Stanford. They played Texas tough. They beat Utah in the Civil War series. So I just think BYU is going to come out more hungry and more fired up. And I pretty much expect Mary Lake, who is the all-time dig leader at BYU, to just have a game when it comes to being in the back row. So, before we only have a couple more conferences to go, we shall get into the Pac-12 conference. Y'all thought I was going to not talk about the Pac-12. Well, you're sadly mistaken. Stanford continues to reign supreme in that conference, as they are all alone in first place, as they only have they still have plenty more. They have 6 games to go. Their game on Saturday when they played Arizona marked the return of Catherine Plummer, as she came off the bench and she helped Stanford get the W that night. So it's definitely great to see Catherine Plummer back. They still haven't released why she sat out. I don't know if it was due to injury, but overall, it's great to see Catherine Plummer back. Kendall Kipp did not play for Stanford last week. Hopefully she's better, and hopefully I didn't jinx her when it came to me picking her as the National Freshman of the Year. I definitely think she has what it takes to be National Freshman of the Year. Hopefully she does get back soon, because she is one dominant player, and she's going to be vital in regards to Stanford's success. As for the rest of the Pac-12, Cal, Washington State, Washington, and Utah are all tied for second place at 10-4. That is craziness. Not really craziness, but Cal's kind of hit a little bit of a rough patch. They just barely got past the Arizona schools. Well, they barely got past Arizona State, and they were able to bounce back after losing to USC, UCLA, and Oregon. Washington State's coming off of a big week last week, as they beat Oregon, as they swept the Oregon schools, and they also beat USC the week before. This week Wazoo is home against Utah and Colorado State. Those are going to be 2 big matchups right there. Washington is also coming off of a solid week, taking down both Oregon schools. And they've won 3 in a row. A team that's kind of dropped off a little bit is UCLA, as they lost to, they had a really tough week last week. They lost to both Colorado and Utah. Now, the Utah one isn't as concerning, but the Colorado one was. I think that Colorado game was a trap game for UCLA, considering Colorado has not, they may not be the best team in the conference, but they're sure as heck not the worst team. Like, Colorado has some talented players. I really think that was a trap game for UCLA, considering UCLA has really turned it around this year, and they've really been dominant. But just to see them lose in straight sets at Pauley Pavilion to Colorado pretty much has woken up the UCLA critics and the Mike Sealy critics. So that was a bit of a tough week last week for UCLA. This week they are home against... Oh no, they're on the road against Cal and Stanford. So UCLA is going to need to snap out of their funk, considering they, with only so many games to go, they need as many wins as possible, because you never know if the NCAA tournament committee leaves out certain teams. And because, like I said, there are 8 teams that are above 500 overall. And if the NCAA tournament committee takes all 8 of those teams, that's basically 1/8 of the 64-team bracket filled, which would be very crazy. It would be very, very crazy, honestly. And I'm pretty sure other schools would frown upon that, considering the Pac-12. That's basically 8 schools from the Pac-12, and that's kind of not fair. But at the same time, the Pac-12 is a power conference school, and even teams like Colorado was up there, and Oregon State has improved. Oregon is kind of a dark. I'm pretty sure Oregon will not be finishing above 500, but Oregon is still a team to watch for, considering they have talent across the board. They did lose like 3 players to Hawaii in terms of them transferring, but Oregon is still Oregon. They are a pretty strong program. So we'll see how it goes, as there's 3 more weeks left when it comes to Pac-12 conference play. But I just think with Catherine Plummer back, I think Stanford is just going to run away with that conference. I give USC and UCLA a decent shot at them, but with Catherine Plummer back, it's just going to be tough for those 2 teams to knock off Stanford. I'm sure Larry B would like to see USC knock off Stanford, especially when they have Kyla Lanier. She is such a dynamic player. She puts up Madden numbers, everybody. And so does Mac May of UCLA as well. So there's that. And now let's jump into the Big Ten Conference, where last week, Ohio State managed to upset Wisconsin, handing them their first loss of conference play, and that has opened the door right there. It's opened the door for so many teams. It's opened the door for Minnesota, which is now tied with Wisconsin for the top spot in the Big Ten Conference. It's also opened the door for Penn State and Nebraska, which is also in the hunt for the the Big Ten Conference Championship. This week, Wisconsin has a huge game at number 6 Minnesota, and they also play home against Michigan State. That Minnesota game is going to be huge. Whoever wins that game pretty much has a leg up on the other team or other teams, including Penn State, Michigan, that's still in it, Nebraska, for the Big Ten Conference Championship. But overall, that's a huge matchup for Wisconsin. Last week was a huge loss for the Badgers, losing. That was just about as tough as Wisconsin losing to Illinois in football. Yeah, but sometimes undefeated teams can't last forever, and that Big Ten Conference is really good, though. That Big Ten Conference is talented, and you look at the teams that are talented. You have Illinois, which is up there, Michigan, which is having a really good season at 10-4 in conference. Purdue took down Nebraska. Illinois is up there. Ohio State is up there. Michigan State is up there. Maryland has improved. Heck, even Illinois has improved quite a bit. So you never know what could happen in this Big Ten. If you're taking your opponent lightly, you're not gonna see the result you want. And and especially since the Big Ten is a Power 5 conference. So Wisconsin versus Minnesota. I'm going to take Wisconsin. No. It's tough. I'm going to take Wisconsin to win this one. I'm going to take them to win it in 5. Wisconsin had a bad week. I think they got their bad match out of the way, but they definitely cannot play like they did against Ohio State in that matchup against Minnesota. And then you also look at Wisconsin's schedule. It gets pretty tough because Michigan State is also up there as well. And then next week they play Iowa, which is their senior night, and then they also play Nebraska. And then their last week they are at Penn State, and then they're at Rutgers. So Wisconsin has far from won the Big Ten Conference Championship. So anyone in that conference between Nebraska, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and heck, even Michigan let's throw Michigan in there. Those teams can still win the conference, the Big Ten Conference. But they just, it all depends on which team rises to the occasion. Penn State is still Penn State. Nebraska, despite them having 0 seniors and being such a young team, that team is still up there. Minnesota shook off its rocky start to the season and is still a potential favorite to win it all. So we'll see how it goes. We will definitely see how it goes in regards to those Big Ten conference teams. But overall, that race is getting really tight, and any of those teams could possibly win the conference. Those five teams being Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. So now the last conference we will be talking about this week will be the Big 12 conference, where Texas, University of Texas, is still in first place at 11-0, and this week they face TCU, Texas Christian University, and they also play Kansas State on Wednesday. So those two should be winnable games for Texas. However, those two games are kind of trap games. They did take care of Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry in 4 sets. That's a tough tongue twister right there, Red River rivalry. So Texas did take care of Oklahoma last week, and they took care of West Virginia. This week they play Kansas State and TCU in Austin, Texas. So yeah, I think Texas gets by Kansas State and TCU. Kansas State and TCU are pretty much near the bottom. So it's pretty much, I don't see, Texas is in control of its destiny. And Texas is in control of its destiny in regards to that conference in general. Next week they do play Baylor. That's my only qualm for Texas would be not to look ahead to Baylor, considering Baylor wants another crack at Texas. Texas wants another crack at Baylor. Baylor this week plays Kansas. Their only game is against Kansas, and Kansas is pretty much near the bottom as well. So for Texas and Baylor, in order to set up a possible scenario of which team will win the Big 12 conference, both teams will have to just go undefeated, and I definitely think Texas has what it takes to go undefeated. That TCU game looks a bit challenging, but TCU hasn't really had its best season in quite some time. I just think Texas is just going to run through those teams, and Baylor is going to run through those teams, and hopefully by next week we will get the Texas versus Baylor rivalry matchup, where both teams are at their best and both teams aren't coming off of losses from last week. So there's that. So we'll see how it goes from there. So actually the last conference we'll be talking about will be the SEC, where Florida leads that conference at 11-1. Kentucky's right behind them at 11-2. Texas A&M is 9-4. Georgia's 9-4, Missouri's 8-4, South Carolina's 8-4, LSU is 13-10. And I'm just reading off their overall records. But this conference looks very promising. This week, Florida has a big week. They face LSU, and then they face Kentucky They face LSU on Friday, and then they face Kentucky on Sunday. So it's going to be that's a huge week for Florida. I believe Florida lost to Kentucky the first time, so it's definitely going to be this is basically crunch time for Florida. As for Kentucky, they lost to Texas A&M, which was kind of big right there. This week the Kentucky only has South Carolina, and then they have Florida. Both those teams. South Carolina is not to be underestimated, as well as LSU. Those two games are trap games for Florida and Kentucky. And if Florida isn't playing at its best, for Florida especially, Florida's got to take care of business against LSU, because once they get to play at once they get to play Kentucky at Florida, it's going to be an electric match. Playing at Florida is very intimidating, or as many people call it, the Swamp. And playing at the Swamp is very tough. Playing and winning at the Swamp is really tough. But overall, Florida does need to get past LSU. Kentucky needs to get past South Carolina. South Carolina has had a pretty phenomenal year. And something that definitely stands out to me in that South Carolina matchup against Kentucky, they've only lost one home game, and now they've only lost one home game this year. Other than that, they're 9-1, which is really, really impressive, and they're 16-8 overall and 8-4 in the conference. So South Carolina might be trying to make a bid to possibly make the NCAA tournament, and they're pretty much right behind Georgia and Texas A&M, as they're tied with Missouri at 8-4 in the conference. So you never know with South Carolina. Like, those Gamecocks will be ready for Kentucky, and LSU is the same deal. 13-10. They may want to make one final push to end the season, and this just goes to show you that teams love to play spoiler to some of these other teams. So you never know what could happen, honestly. And this SEC is kind of crazy, and especially with Texas A&M being in the mix. Big shout out to H-Town Blake Henley, by the way, who's a big Texas A&M fan. Back to the SEC in terms of women's volleyball. Florida and Kentucky is going to be really good on Sunday. Since the Chargers don't play, I'll probably be checking out that matchup. So we'll see how it goes, though. But other than that, that pretty much wraps it up. I spend 90 minutes when it comes to talking about these conferences. I'll probably do 90 minutes when it comes to next week, considering everyone will pretty much have their regular season wrapped up, and then we'll probably be talking about conference tournaments next week. So with all that being said, thank you all for listening, and once again, thank you to all our veterans. Gotta give the veterans one last applause. Once again, thank you, veterans, for your service. If you've served in the military, you definitely have a big thank you from me. You have the applause button right here. And with all that being said, cue the music! So once again, you can find me at Teran Rodriguez 1, Teran, and then my last name, Rodriguez, has a G in it, and then the number 1. And you can find me on Twitter, basically talking about sports and volleyball in particular. And once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, signing out. And remember, if you are going, go for the ball.